Hey there, everyone. I'm Neil Tyra, and if you're tuning in to this Facebook Live event, you probably already know that I'm an attorney here in Rockville, Maryland, who primarily focuses on estate planning, things like wills and trusts and powers of attorney and that kind of thing, although I do other areas of law. And I've been meaning to do a weekly video chat for some time now. Problem is, I keep waiting for everything to be just perfect. I have a bunch of things that I want to do in terms of doing all these videos, and I wanted to get a different camera, I wanted to get a different setting, and all these things. I wanted to lose 10 pounds, but if I waited for all of those things to come into place and be perfect, I would never get around to doing this. So I decided to follow the advice of some smart people and just jump in and present this live event, and hopefully we'll get better at it as we go along, and we'll gather a lot more folks along the way. So today I want to talk about a question that I get often in the estate planning business, and that is, what is probate versus non-probate property? And more specifically, what is probate? Probate is a legal process administered by the courts that determines where your property goes, where your assets go, when you pass, when you die. And if you have a will, then you get to determine where those assets go. If you die without a will, what we call intestate, then the court or the state is to decide where those assets go. And they follow a set of rules designed to accommodate the greatest number of circumstances, or the most likely circumstances. So the laws of intestacy are designed to be as fair as possible, but that doesn't always mean that your wishes or the things that matter to you, or based on your family circumstances, would be carried out the way you would want them to do. So the best way to guard against that problem is to draw up a will. And we will talk about how you go about doing that, what's involved, what's required a little later on in these chats. But right now, I wanted to talk about, having done so, what property, what kind of things go through that process. So in other words, what is property that is probated or probate property, and what isn't? Well, sometimes the best way to explain that is to define first what is not probate property. And there are several classifications of property that are probate, that won't go through the probate process. The most obvious one is anything that has a beneficiary statement. So if you have a life insurance policy, or a 401k savings plan, or pension plan, or any type of investment vehicle, anything in which you have a beneficiary statement and you can define who the beneficiary is, that is non-probate property. And that means that the asset, when you pass away, that asset will go to your beneficiary automatically by operation of law. The court doesn't have to get involved, nor will it. So the surviving members of your family or the beneficiary themselves simply presents the death certificate to the holder of that property, the company that holds the 401k or the investment account, and you'll get a check. So that is handled outside of the probate process, and we call that non-probate property. Similarly, another classification of property that is non-probate would be jointly owned property that has the right of survivorship attached to it. So if you're a married couple and you own a home, in all likelihood, the home is titled to the two of you as joint tenants in its entireties, which is a special classification of joint ownership with right of survivorship, or joint owners with the right of survivorship. And if that is how the property is held, when one of those joint owners passes away, then the other inherits that interest automatically by operation of law. So if you own a house as a joint owner with your spouse, or let's say a sibling, you and a sibling own a piece of property, or you and a business partner own a piece of property jointly with right of survivorship, then when one of you passes away, the whole property then goes to that other joint owner. The third category of non-probate property would be anything that has a payable upon death designation. And that's very similar to the beneficiary. So some bank accounts, some checking accounts, they are payable upon death types of property ownership. So when you pass away, contents of those accounts automatically become the property of and go to whoever is designated as the payable upon death designee. I know in my own case, the most obvious example of that is when a whole bunch of U.S. savings bonds that were payable upon death to a beneficiary. So, like a beneficiary statement payable upon death is a non-probate property. So everything else, therefore, is then probate property and has to go through that probate process. So if you have a will, the court would administer that process in accordance with your wishes. If you don't have a will, the court still administers that process, but it follows a set of rules laid out in the intestacy laws. So it is possible, if you're careful, to structure your entire estate such that everything has a beneficiary statement or a payable upon death itemization or notification, or is jointly owned with a right of survivorship. You could structure your estate so those are the only kinds of property that you have, or the only ways in which you own that property, in which case the remainder of your estate would go through the probate process via the intestacy laws, but there wouldn't be a lot, if any. So in that case, you wouldn't need a will. It's kind of risky to do that unless you're real specific. You may miss something, and something important, or acquire a piece of property late and not get around to defining who the beneficiary is, or something along those lines. So it's always better to have a will than to not have a will, but it is possible that you can structure your estate so that it's all non-probate property. So that's the difference between probate and non-probate property and why it's important. I hope that was helpful to you. If you find that useful, just indicate in the comments below. I'd appreciate that. Tell your friends we're going to be here next week, same bat time, same bat channel. And if you have a specific topic regarding estate planning that you'd like to hear us yap about, let me know. I'd be happy to talk about it. So until then, I want to thank you for being here today, and we'll see you next time.